Yep, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order, please. It's a meeting of the Brant Council, Brant County Council special meeting for planning.
Meeting.
All right. So everyone knows how this works. If you fall off the call, we will wait a few minutes to wait for you. We do have a quorum, so we'll only wait for 5 or 10 minutes and then we'll continue without you. If you want to say anything, please just put your hand up. I'll keep track of the hands. I don't think there's anything else. We're not going in camera tonight for anything, so you don't have to worry about the protocol for that. But I will go to item 1 on the agenda. Before we begin, I do that the we've heard from the health unit, and we've also heard from the premier that the county of Brant has gone into a different phase of COVID affected change. And they've got it color coded now, red obviously being a very bad thing. And we've been upgraded from yellow to orange, and orange is the next thing to red. So it has been sort of a bad news story for the county of Brant today. I mean, it's not a terrible story, but it is changed, and it's changed for a reason. I think maybe just because of our proximity to Hamilton and the way it sort of wraps around us at the top. So we are designated orange right now. And so we just have to keep an eye on it. And I'm sure that next week when we meet at the health unit, we'll talk all about things we can do better. But I do believe that everyone who's doing things the best they can't do any better. It's a few people that really do have to decide they have to help, because again, the only way we're going to get through this is together. So I just wanted to let you know that it's not a horrible news story, but it is a story that wasn't here yesterday. So now we'll begin. Number 1 on the agenda is attendance. When I call your name, please just let me know that you're here. Councillor Wheat.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor LaFerriere, please.
Here.
Councillor Howes.
Here.
You skipped over me, but
Pardon?
you skipped over me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor McAlpine.
I'm here, present.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Here, present.
Councillor Pierce.
Present.
Councillor Chambers isn't here. Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Coleman.
Here.
Councillor Gatward.
Present.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda, please, including the addendum. Councillor Wheat.
Is there any additions before I move it?
I don't believe there are. There's no additions to the agenda.
There is an addendum though, so if we
There is an addendum, John.
I understand that. I just
Thank
want
you.
anyone else wanted to add something before I move it.
Okay,
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Bell that the agenda be approved.
thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any declarations of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. There are no delegations. We do have public hearings though. Well, the first one is going to be the community involvement plan. It's going to be spoken to by Zach. It is a public hearing. Where's Zach? There he is. Zach, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. You want to go ahead?
Yes, so I don't have a formal presentation prepared, but I will just share a few words on the community improvement plan.
Thank you.
Yes, so through Section 28 of the Planning Act, municipalities are allowed to designate community improvement project areas and community improvement plans. And the county currently has 3 of these, and they're for our downtown core areas. And what that does is allows us to provide specific programs to those core areas to see intended changes we want. The program that's in front of you today is a new community improvement plan, and it encompasses the whole county. So it functions a little bit differently, where the whole county is now eligible, but you have to be a specific business in order to receive the benefit or the incentive. And that business is one that's open to the public, where there is, kind of a risk of public interaction with staff. And what we're offering is a financial incentive up to $2,000 for eligible businesses to put in some sort of permanent infrastructure to help, stop the spread more or less. And it, whatever they do has to be in line with the guidance from the province and the local health unit. And we're just following the planning process here and bringing this to you in the public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, I will declare this a public hearing now. Heather, is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak to this?
No, I have no members of the public here tonight.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Zach? Seeing none, I'll call the public hearing closed. How do you want to resolve this, Councillor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Ferrier. Staff report RPT-20-197, Public Safety Community Improvement Plan, be approved as presented.
Everyone's clear? No more questions? Call the vote. All those in favor, please. Opposed? Carried. Number 6, Matt, I believe you're going to speak to this.
Yes, thanks very much. Tonight we'll be hearing from staff regarding 3 forms of reports. The first, Planning Act applications. Initial public meeting presentations will focus on new planning applications that have been received and are being presented to council with the intent to provide information and receive public input on the application. The second, Planning Act applications, the statutory public hearings, will focus on planning reports with staff recommendations for applications that have either been presented to council before as information or are exempt from the initial presentation process. The third set of reports focus on county-initiated planning policy projects to be received as information and seeking support of the associated work plans and timelines. Tonight, there will be 3 initial public meeting presentations, 5 statutory public hearings, and 3 policy-related project reports for council's consideration. Thank you.
Any questions before we begin? Seeing none, we'll move on to 6A, please.
Yeah, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wheat that the presentations made regarding application CDM 01/20/RC and ZBA 32/20/RC, Pinevest Homes, 40, 46 and 56 Cedar Street, be received as information and referred to staff for consideration as part of the recommendation report.
Thank you. We'll declare this a public meeting. Heather, are there anyone here to speak to the application? Is anyone here?
Yes, the applicant, Nancy from GSP, and Bob Stewart from Pinevest, and Matt from Walter Feedy are here to speak to the application, all on behalf of the applicant.
All right. Who's going to speak first?
I'll start, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to you, Mr. Mayor, and councillors. And my name is Bob Stewart from Pinevest Homes, and I'm here virtually this evening with our planner, Nancy Friday from GSP Group, and Matt Ninomiya from Walter Feedy, who's our engineer on the file. Nancy will be providing a brief presentation on our application, but first I'd just like to take a few minutes just as a quick overview and a bit of history on the project. We have been working on this one for some time. We purchased the lands at 40 and 46 Cedar Street in early 2019 with the intention of creating 12 single-family homes within a vacant land condominium development. In June of 2019, Pinevest hosted our own open house at the Brant County Sports Complex to discuss the proposed development with area residents, which was quite well attended. And at the meeting, the main concerns generally were focused around the existing condition of Cedar Street, along with stormwater issues within the road and the right-of-way. So based on these concerns, we worked with the county, and the county internally had proceeded to design and potential upgrades to Cedar Street. and it asked Pinevest to hold off on moving our application forward, which we agreed to, and work with the county to be sure that if our design were to come forward, it would tie in properly to any of the future upgrades that the county would be doing. Of course, due to the pandemic, the upgrades to Cedar Street were pushed from the budget from 2020 to 2021, and I believe that the county is planning on holding the public meeting regarding the upgrades before the year's end. But during this delay, Pinevest was able to acquire the additional lands at 56 Cedar Street, a portion of those lands, which have been added to this application to create a total of 20 50-foot or wider lots for single-family homes within a vacant land condo, keeping with the same design principles as the earlier 12-lot plan. So just with that bit of background, I'll hand it over to Nancy. She's got a presentation, and I think she's going to try to share her screen with you all.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, before we begin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wonder whether we would get a presentation from staff before this.
Okay, is staff prepared to give a presentation on Cedar Street?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Planning staff have received an application for a zoning bylaw amendment and plan of vacant land condominium from the GSP group on behalf of Pinevest Homes. The applicant, as Bob mentioned, is proposing to develop the subject lands with 20-unit vacant land condominium, which will consist of bungalow-style single-detached dwellings. The applicant is also proposing site-specific zoning provisions to allow for a 5% increase in lot coverage, as well as technical provisions to address setbacks from a private street. I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Bell, that's all we have for you for a report from staff. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, can we ask staff questions now, Mr. Mayor, on this?
Sure.
Okay, well, then I will ask three to staff. Why is our lot coverage at 40%? Why is that the default value?
Huh?
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, it's a good question. It is set in our zoning bylaw currently for this particular zone. In addition to that, I have no further information to share, unfortunately. If council wishes to revisit that number, it's something that staff could consider during the next zoning bylaw housekeeping update. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just a little bit further to that conversation, I was looking for a definitive answer. I just wondered if it has anything to do with stormwater runoff, if we see an increase of that. What I was going to say is, if that's the case, whatever the reason there is for 40%, we go to 45%. Would we put any onus on the developer to do anything differently? And again, if I go to stormwater runoff, would you ask them to maybe put in swales or make sure they got rainwater barrels for each housing unit or something to that effect? But if you could let me know why that's at 40% versus 45% as the default value, I'd be quite interested in finding out. Otherwise, why do we waste our time? You know what I mean? Going from asking people to come forward and asking for a bylaw exemption to go to 45. So more information from staff on that, Mr. Mayor, would be appreciated.
Yeah, that's quite acceptable there. Councillor Bell, please, first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions to staff. I've seen a lot of correspondence between local residents and the county, which question the timing of this development relative to the upgrades that we're proposing for Cedar Street. I wonder if staff could comment on how they will make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves by approving this application at the right time and not having yet had the public discussion around the design for Cedar Street.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I could gladly answer that question. And so through previous consultation with Pinevest, the county had made it pretty clear that we wanted to see those improvements to Cedar Street due to the ongoing concerns with COVID. The public engagement for that project, the county initiated project, has been delayed, but I understand that our operations staff are working towards that by the end of this month. I believe there's a tentative date set for the end of the month, and we can certainly make that available. In terms of the development approvals for this vacant land condo, I think quite simply we would request or require a draft plan condition to be imposed for the approvals of the condominium development, that no works would take place until such time that the Cedar Street improvements are done to the satisfaction of the county.
Thank you.
Before we get into the motion, I think we do need to make sure that we know that this is a public hearing. Okay, Councillor Gatward first, please. Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question with respect to the lands shown at the front of Cedar Street. There's 2 blocks on either side of the applicant's roadway that are vacant. Are those reserved for road improvements? And my other comment or question is, what is the frontage for each one of these lots, with the exception of the pie-shaped lot? And would it be prudent to wait? I know the residents want the road redone, but would it be prudent to wait till after all the building and heavy machinery and equipment is done in there and then fix the road? Because in my mind, there's nothing worse than having a nice new road and then having equipment, machinery come in and spoil the new road or damage the new road. Just my comments, but I'd like to know about those 2 blocks in the front and the frontages. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferrier, please.
No, I want an answer from staff.
Oh, you want an answer? Well, I don't think staff is really prepared for a lot of these questions today. Do you want to try that one, Matt? Who wants to speak to that?
I can certainly speak to that, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize, of course, it's difficult to see in your agenda, but adjacent to units 12 and 13 on the Cedar Street frontage, the county has taken road widening at that point. And I apologize, I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but we have required road widening dedications to be dedicated to the county at both frontages to facilitate future improvements to Cedar Street. I believe specifically related to the ones on unit 12 and 13 that we had acquired those lands through the severance of a lot off of, I believe it was the southwesterly corner of Cedar Street. And further to the councillor's question regarding the timing of the improvements, in my best estimation, I think that would be a question best answered by our operations staff, how they would like to see the improvements to Cedar Street play out in terms of the timing of both this development and how the contracts are awarded and how the timing of Cedar Street improvements are planned. And we certainly can bring that topic up at that open house that we had referred to earlier.
Thank you. And do you know the frontages?
For you, Mr. Mayor, the approximate frontages are in the range of 15 to 16 meters. And again, they're ghosted in on this plan, but I can certainly make that available to you, Councillor Gatward, and you can take a look. And I'm sure that the applicant or their agent can elaborate on the exact frontages if you're looking for numbers.
Thank you.
Councillor Ferrier, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff. So there seems to be a lot of, as Councillor Bell said, a lot of correspondence from residents sort of saying that in some way, shape, or form that the developer hasn't made improvements that were promised. I want to clarify that one way or the other. It sounds to me in the course of this meeting that those improvements are on hold due to a decision by the county based on issues related to COVID-19. Is that true, or is what the residents are responding with more accurate?
Are you looking for an answer from staff or from Mr.
I am, yes. So from staff.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ferrier, I think that there's a distinction to be made between the terminology for the improvements of Cedar Street and then some of the concerns that we've heard from neighbors with respect to the applicant's previous developments on Cedar Street, and that would be specifically at 23 and 56 Cedar Street. There were some concerns raised through correspondence with respect to the development of those sites and the status of the development of those sites. We're working diligently with the developer to get those sites completed, and we do appreciate and understand that those are valid concerns. But with respect to the development of this site, I think we have to separate those two items. And then again, the other item that we hear a lot about is the upgrades and improvements to Cedar Street itself, and that's a county-run project, and that is, from my understanding, through operations staff, has been pushed back, unfortunately, due to COVID, but we are working diligently on that as well.
So a little from column A and a little from column B then. My follow-up then would be that this is just for information. Nothing's going to start regardless of tonight's proceedings. However, while the road piece, it sounds like in the previous questions from Councillor Bell, while the road piece that the county is responsible for, nothing will be able to start until that is done. What about the resident concerns about those two properties that you say, there are some valid concerns there? Will things be able to start before those improvements are made? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, again, I think we need to separate those two items. We're working with the developer, but I don't think we'd be in a position legally to impose any conditions for the development of one site based on the performance at another.
Is that the answer you were looking for, Councillor?
It was an answer, and an answer I accept. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other questions to staff? Okay, Mr. Stewart, we can continue with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can pass it over to Nancy, and I can also provide some clarity to those questions from our end as well, if you'd like now or after the fact.
Actually, you know what? Why don't you do it now, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, definitely some great questions, and just I got some notes here, but maybe start with Councillor Ferrier. So yeah, there were some comments coming from 23 Cedar, and the other development we had on Cedar Street was 59 Cedar Street. I think Ryan mentioned 56. 59 is close to being approved by the county. There weren't any concerns from residents, I believe, on that one. 23, we were the home builder on the project. We weren't the developer. So we're working specifically with the developer to try to address some of the final grading concerns and survey work that, again, some of it was delayed due to COVID, but pushed to get that done in order to finalize that plan and work directly with the county to address those concerns as soon as possible. So we're working directly with the developer's engineer to try to finalize those requirements, and it's a top priority for us, and we'll work specifically with staff on that. In terms of the lot frontages, absolutely, they're 50 foot and above on those, and those two blocks Councillor Gatward had mentioned I believe on the north-south corridor, those will be future lots as well that you'll see on the presentation, but they'll be not part of the vacant land condo, just to continue along that frontage of Cedar Street. They will be fronting onto Cedar Street, connecting into the existing services that would be there, not part of the vacant land condo. So although Pinevest owns those lands, they will be separate from the vacant land condo. I think, and Councillor Bell, the comments, and again, just generally on the Cedar Street updates, I think Ryan did cover it there. Definitely, I think the original plan for a public meeting for Cedar Street residents with the county was, I believe it was planned for April, which of course got pushed off. And we are working closely with the county, obviously, on our plans and how a development like ours would go forward and make sure we tie in properly, as I say, with any future services. I think the goal would be, if we do get approval and can move forward on the plans, we would do so together with the county. You definitely don't want to rip up a brand new road, and you don't want to cause any further disruptions to the residents on Cedar Street. So hopefully we're able to work together on the design and even, as Ryan mentioned, potential contracts, and just to limit the disruptions and find efficiencies in that process. So we'll definitely be working with the county close on that one as we move forward. And I think we'd like to, this is the first step in a long process. There's still draft plan conditions. There's still engineering design to be done. And this is a step in that direction. And there is currently a holding provision already on a portion of the lands. Again, that would be there for the county's benefit to make sure all is done in appropriate ways prior to that development occurring. So hopefully I covered all those. I know we're bouncing around a bit, but Nancy has put together a quick presentation, and hopefully we can share the screen and provide that for you.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, I'm trying to share this screen. I'm not sure that happened.
That's good. It's good. We can see it.
Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning here. Okay, so this is just the first slide is just showing where the property is, and there's been a graphic added to show the 20 dwellings that would be located on the new private condominium road, as well as in the future 4 new dwellings on Cedar Street. The next slide is kind of cool. I'll see if it works to get to see sort of a movement here to zero in on the property. And just to give you an idea of what the ultimate development will look like, we have Lorianne Lane to the north and Cedar Street, and the single detached dwellings are located internal to the site. So the proposal, I think, has been mentioned a number of times. It's the 20 single detached dwellings within the vacant land condominium, and this is on a private condominium road. The vacant land condominium is basically, it's like a plan of subdivision, but you're creating a private road and lots on that private road, and those lots can be registered before anything is built. And the one other component of the application is just a minor rezoning to permit any of the setbacks that would apply to a public road to apply to a private street in this case. And I will explain with a bit of a graphic in a minute the slight increase in the lot coverage from 40% to 45%. This is just, I think I've already said that. So this is just showing the draft plan of condominium with the units that are referred to vacant land units. And these 2 blocks are the blocks that are land owned by the applicant that we referred by the referred to by the councillor prior. They will be severed in the future. So this was an interesting graphic that we were just showing what does 40% lot coverage look like in compared to 45. This is a typical rectangular lot that would be within the draft plan of condominium, and the orange is showing your 40%, and just a little bit notched out is the gray portion, which is 45%. And Pinevest is interested in building bungalows and bungalofts, and this is mostly a ground floor living area. So based on their designs and prototypes, we just needed a bit more lot coverage to get the development that was desired. So that's the 45% increase just in the gray area. A number, in case of any of the public is listening in, I know there's stormwater management and ponding issues on Cedar Street right now. This slide is just showing that there have been a number of components built into the redevelopment to direct the overland flow in swales to catch basins and underground infiltration galleries. And this is to aid in the infiltration of the stormwater into the ground. So it requires a number of rear yard infiltration galleries that you can see circled in red, as well as storage, surface storage, underground storage within the road itself. So all these measures have been designed according to the province's standards, and they're also required. They will contain the 100-year storm, and anything beyond that, the county is looking at improvements to stormwater management on Cedar Street, and that will come. And there's an EA proposed for that work, and I understand there's a meeting on, excuse me, a meeting on November 25th for the public to come and look at the designs for the stormwater, as well as the reconstruction of Cedar Street. So that will be the first step in informing everyone how things will proceed. And this is just some images of what the bungalows and bungalofts will look like. that have been built elsewhere by Pinevest. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter? Well, the slides are still up, so she can go back and you want to refer to a slide? I can only see a couple of counselors, so you're going to have to take down the slide presentation for me to see the hands, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter? No? Everyone understands what's going to happen? All right, thank you. Are there any members of the public here, Heather?
No, I have no members of the public to speak.
Okay, then we will call the meeting closed, public meeting closed. And Councillor Bell, you have a resolution? This is the time we should have done it. Councillor Bell?
I have read it out once. I can happily read it again if that's okay.
I think we went out of order, which made this whole process a little bit wanky. So
Okay.
I would like you to read it again, please.
Okay, keep me in touch then. So
All right.
moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wheat that the presentations made regarding application CDM 01/20/RC and ZBA 32/20/RC, Pinevest Homes 40, 46 and 56 Cedar Street be received as information and referred to staff for consideration as part of the recommendation report.
Thank you. And staff was going to bring back maybe some clarification. Maybe just send it to us, send it to all of us, please. Anything that we weren't clear of tonight. Seemed to be a few things that were not quite tightened up. I've asked if there's any questions way too many times on this, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, 6B. Matt, you're going to speak to this application, please, of 22 Airport Road.
I am. Thank you. Planning staff have received a zoning bylaw application prepared by J.H. Cahoon Engineering on behalf of the owner for the subject lands located at 22 Airport Road. The subject lands are located on the northwest corner of Colborne Street West and Airport Road and have a total area of approximately 8.4 hectares. The applications requesting to modify the existing M18 zoning to permit a cannabis production facility as a permitted use. The cannabis production facility is proposed to occupy a portion within the existing building. As part of the review of the application, staff are considering the following. Cannabis production facilities are permitted within the M2, M3, A, and AE zone, required to meet and maintain 150-meter separation distance to any residential zone or use, institutional zone or use, or open space zone. We'll be considering air quality control measures. Open storage will be prohibited. Site plan control application will be required. And in terms of next steps, the application has been circulated for comments to applicable staff and commenting agencies. Once all the comments have been received, further notice of the public hearing will be circulated to landowners within 125 meters, and staff will present a recommendation report followed by a decision by the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to declare the public meeting open. And Heather, is there anyone here to speak to the applicant or the applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Van Porten is here and Joe Zamparo on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rob Van Porten, Cahoon Engineering Limited.
Yes, sir.
As the planner noted, this application seeks the rezoning of 22 or portion of 22 Airport Road to allow a cannabis production facility, and that facility is only for the growing and harvesting of the product. The actual process will take place off-site in another facility. Members, at least I'm old enough to remember that the existing building was once the production facility of Bluebird bus lines. That use obviously has since ceased a number of years ago. And this application seeks to rezone approximately 58% of the building for the cannabis production facility. The balance of the building is currently used for a wholesale bus and bus part facility. Members will recall that the portion of the building that is subject to this rezoning was rezoned to allow a brick manufacturing facility. And that facility has since ceased, and the building is being decommissioned to allow this facility. The proposed cannabis growing facility is not a use permitted in the M1 zone. Ironically, it is permitted within all other areas of the airport industrial area, except for that site. It was specifically zoned M1-8 to allow the brick plant. And the zoning application seeks to replicate the brick rezoning, substituting the brick manufacturing for the cannabis production facility. All other elements of the zoning would remain, other than there would be no storage, outside storage. Transport, loading and unloading would occur in the north face of the building, away from the Colburn Street and the residential area on the opposite side. I've got Mr. Phillips here as well. He pointed out, and correctly, that there is a substantial buffer and brick wall along Colburn Street, hiding much of the building. But as I said, there is no outdoor storage anticipated, nor in my zoning request required or requested. Mr. Mayor and members, Bob Phillips is here to respond to any technical questions. We just have to do a little bit of chair shifting if one is required. I can respond to questions, or Mr. Phillips can.
Does council have any questions of clarification? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the applicant's agent, Rob, the distance from the proposed production facility, is it measured from the property line or the building to across the road where the residents are, or to the residents on Westview Street to the east?
The measurement is taken. Apologize. The measurement is taken from the building, and we're about 150 meters to the opposite side of Colburn Street.
150 meters.
150, yes.
And so it would be 300 meters or 250 meters to Westview, which is east of the facility, Westview Street. It's shown there.
We don't have that answer, Councillor. We will get it for you and send it directly to staff and or you.
Okay, thank you. And the so this is to grow inside, not make cannabis for sale products. Is that what I heard you say?
No, it's totally for the growing, and there is no retail. No retail whatsoever. It's just for the growing and the harvesting of the product.
So can you answer me, what measures do you know will be taken, since this facility wasn't specifically built for growing cannabis and it's being converted from a brick plant? What measures will be taken for the emissions when they harvest it, for instance? That's supposedly when it has the most odor. Where will that go? Up the smokestack, or is there going to be a special system installed to reduce odors in the community?
Perhaps Mr. Phillips can best respond to that. And we'll just switch chairs here.
Okay, thank you. I'm just
Thank
concerned,
you.
there's a lot of housing in that area, as you know, and the west wind will blow to the Oak Hill subdivision.
Basically, as part of the site plan approval process, there will be an odor study done for the review of the county. There are controls being put in place as it relates to the odor. We don't anticipate any odors from the facility.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Miller first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one is actually for staff, and through you. I'm going to guess Matt. Later on in the agenda, we have some new cannabis bylaws we're looking at. Would this application be looked at under the existing cannabis bylaws or the ones later on if approved?
Through the mayor to Councilor Miller, this would be under the existing policy framework.
Okay, thank you.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with the sound, Heather. It's breaking up a little bit for everyone. Councillor Gatward?
Thank you for that, Ms. Councillor Miller, and Mr. Mayor, through you to staff. If the report later on is approved tonight by council.
Go see what his connection's like, because I haven't had any problems.
Okay. If this report tonight that Councillor Miller mentioned that's later on regarding new cannabis rules in the county, it'll be approved as of tonight. This application will not be approved as of tonight. It may not be approved until December or January. So if that's the case, why wouldn't it fall under the new rules? I don't.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gatward, good question. And I actually anticipated the question, and I wondered it myself, to be honest. I followed up with our county solicitor and asked the question that if we have received the application, which we have, and the application has been deemed complete, that the policy framework that is in place today would be what's used as part of the analysis of the application. So if the new cannabis production and processing policy framework is approved tonight by council, and this application down the road gets approved, it would be a legal non-complying use.
Councillor Gatward? That answers your question?
Yeah, I'm not sure I like it, but staff have answered. Thank you.
And Councillor Ferrier, please.
Just a quick question to staff. So what would happen if we deferred for one cycle?
Staff?
Through the mayor to Councillor Leferrier, I think, sorry, I didn't see who asked, but the application has still been received. So there is legal precedent that after an application has been received, it's the policy that's in place today. But it sounds like from the applicant, from the agent, that they will be instituting odor control measures as part of their site plan control. So we will be following up with that in the future. Additionally, there are other tools that could be at the disposal of municipal council and county in the future, should we wish to pursue them, like an odor control bylaw through the Municipal Act, which acts retroactively. So there are other ways of going about odor control, but for the purposes of the later zoning update, that does not act retroactively.
Thank you. I think that answers the question. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on behalf of the applicant? No? Seeing none. Heather, are there any members of the public here to speak?
No, I have no members of the public scheduled to speak on this.
Okay. We'll call the meeting closed. Councillor Bell, what do you want to do now? Councillor Bell?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that the presentations made regarding application ZBA 34/20/DN-Jazz Brick 22 Airport Road be received as information and referred to staff for consideration as part of the recommendation report.
Anyone? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noticed on the next steps, page 35, it says in there, and I'm surprised there's nobody here from the public. It says in there, notices will be circulated as required by the Planning Act. Shouldn't it say notices were circulated? Have they been circulated? And if so, when were they circulated? This says they will be circulated.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gatward, the circulation for the information presentation before you today was circulated. When it comes back to council as a recommendation report, it will be circulated a second time. Thank you.
I think Councillor Gatward wanted to know when it was circulated, though. Do you remember when you did that?
Through the mayor, if you just give us a moment, we can look that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Gatward, can they get back to you with that date that they circulated it?
Yes, that would be fine. And if any of the residents were circulated, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we call the vote? Councillor Bell, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a related question to that of Councillor Gatward. We draw a radius of 150 meters on these drawings, and yet we put our circulation radius at 125. So if I just look to the drawing which shows that radius, there are houses on Colborne Street that may not have been contacted simply because they fell outside of that 125 meter radius, but are within the 150 meter radius. Could staff comment on that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bell, that's a good point. And if council wishes, we could extend the circulation to 150 meters for this application.
Yeah, I think it was a very good question, Councillor Bell. And I think for a situation like this, where odor is going to be brought up again, that we do increase that circulation to 150. Else want to speak to that? It was Councillor Coleman wanted to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to let Councillor Gatward know, as sitting on the airport board, we were notified at least over 2 weeks ago of this public meeting, so they were sent out in plenty enough time.
Thank you for that, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Howes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, if Councillor Bell was turning it into a motion to adjust the circulation to 150 meters, I was prepared to second it.
Heather, do we need a motion for that to go from 1.25 to 150?
Nope. If council can just agree by concurrence to direct staff to do that.
Okay, I think that is a very good idea. Yeah, Councillor Coleman? Yeah. Everyone want to concur? Yep. Not concurring? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir?
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I just might want to make a point. Circulation is usually from the property line. 150 meters was actually, that I gave you, was actually from the building. So in fact, the property owners on the south side of Colborne Street would have been notified because, as I said, notice is always required to be from the property line, not the actual building. if that clarifies things.
Thank you very much. I think because it has been brought up and we got a thumbs up from Councillor Bell, I think it's good that it was brought up, and we will just make sure that that's the way it rolled out. So any other questions? Before we call the vote, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for presenting tonight. Number 6C, please. West side of Cathcart. You've got that. Matt, you've got that too?
Yes, thank you. Planning staff have received a zoning bylaw amendment application for a parcel of land located at Highway 53 and 6th Concession Road. The application is requesting to change the zoning on a portion of the subject lands located within the hamlet village of Cathcart from agricultural to residential hamlet with a special exemption to permit further residential lot creation. Further consent applications will be required to facilitate the new residential lot creation. In terms of next steps, the application has been circulated for comments to applicable staff and commenting agencies. And once all comments have been received, an additional notice of a public hearing will be circulated, and landowners within 125 meters will be notified, and staff will present a recommendation report followed by a decision by the committee. Some additional notes and considerations for this application will be potable water supply required as a condition of consent, and also sight lines will have to be confirmed at the time of consent as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll declare this public meeting open. Heather, is there anyone here to speak to the application?
Yep, Mr. Van Porten is on the meeting to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This application or applications, we are pinch hitting on behalf of Harwood Snodgrass. The applications have been made to create 4 residential lots on the west side, extreme west side of the settlement area of Cathcart. 2 of the lots will have frontage on Highway 53, and 2 lots will have frontage on 6th Concession. As I point out, the proposed lots are in the far extreme end of the settlement area of Cathcart, are designated residential within the official plan. And this zoning application seeks the rezoning of the proposed lots from the current agricultural zoning category to hamlet residential. This application also seeks a modification to that zoning category to recognize a reduction in the actual lot areas. It is noted that the residential category requires a lot frontage of 30 meters and an overall area of 3,000 square meters. Each lot will in fact have a width and exceeding 30 meters, but the lots are 2,730 square meters or greater. One is 2,730 and 3 of them are 2,750. So the zoning requests a slight modification to the required lot area. Mr. Mayor and members, we are aware that fairly late in the day, an email did come into staff expressing concern about the creation of the lots because of stormwater issues in the area, perceived stormwater issues in the area, and 2 trees that appear to be in the way of the 6th concession frontage. Both those items will obviously be addressed at the severance process, as we are required to create grading plans as well as identify trees. The balance of the farm is 7.4 hectares, and that is designated agricultural and zoned agriculture, and there's no request for change in for the retained parcel, the 7.4 hectares. Mr. Mayor and members, I can respond to questions.
Thank you.
As best I can.
Questions of the applicant, please, with the representative, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, a couple quick ones, if I could. Regarding the houses that are fronting on to 6th Concession there, I'm just wondering, this might not be the time, but I'd like to get it out here now in the sense that what I'd like to see as far as driveways, is there any way to get the mutual access road entrance like the ones on that are backing onto Highway 53, rather than creating 2 additional driveways on the 6th Concession? It would be a shared driveway. That's my one question. And the second question, further on in our package, there's a slide there, and it kind of denotes, it says the red line interpreted by staff as being the westerly limit of the Cathcart Hamlet designation. And then there's an orange line that says line that could be potentially inferred as the current westerly limit of the residential development. So I'm just trying to look for a little clarification on that as to which one of those is the actual westerly limit. And again, if possible, could we, at the appropriate time, request that the access from 6th Concession is also a shared access driveway?
I'm going to respond to the first one. I think it's up to staff to respond to the second one, and I know the answer to the second one as well, but because I was involved with the severance of all the lots on the south side. But certainly we can look at shared access on 6th Concession when we do the severance, and it's a valid point, and that certainly can be a deciding factor in the severance process.
Appreciate that. And I guess if staff could just give me clarification on the other three, Mr. Mayor.
Through the mayor to Councillor Pierce. Staff will confirm that when the application comes forward at the next recommendation. Our mapping is good enough today to be able to show us where that line is. There is, in the past, has been some ambiguity around where that line is, but we should have a definitive answer when this comes back as a formal application.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Gatward?
And this question is probably similar to Councillor Pierce's. To me, it looks like there's only a tiny sliver of land within the hamlet settlement boundary, and that the majority of these 4 lots are outside of the settlement boundary and on agricultural land. It looks to me that it's farmed. I'm not sure. It's a small parcel. I do realize that. And this will make it even smaller if we take 4 lots out. So I'm wondering, is this permitted to rezone lands that are designated? Are these lands designated as ag as well as zoned as ag? The lands that are outside the settlement boundary?
Who wants to speak to that? Yeah, staff.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gatward, this application is for the rezoning of the lands that are designated as hamlet, not the rezoning of lands designated agriculture. So once we do figure out the definitive line, that will be the area that is rezoned.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Miller?
Just reiterate what has already been said. It looks like it would almost need an OPA, official plan amendment, because so much of it seems to be outside of the hamlet area. But good, we'll leave it with staff to determine that. And just a correction to what Rob, you said earlier about a perceived stormwater management problem out there. I can tell you, having grown up in the area, it's not perceived. It is real. It's pretty swampy out there. So drainage is definitely an issue. Thank you.
I think because the 3 councillors have made sort of the same observations, it's a direction to staff to make sure that when the next application comes forward, the lines are very clear. Maybe not 2 sets of lines, maybe 1 set of correct lines would be great. but I think it's on the radar. So any other questions? Presenter, are there any members of the public here, Heather, to speak against it?
No, I have no members of the public tonight.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the meeting closed. Are there any other questions before we call the vote? Pierce, the resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gatward that the presentation made regarding ZBA 30-20-DN for 571-245 Ontario Limited west side of Cathcart be received as information and referred to staff for consideration as part of the recommendation report.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarification? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 7, please. That's going to be Matt also.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. For this presentation, we have Jessica Kitchen is going to be presenting this for us.
Thank you. Jessica? Hello.
Good evening, and thanks, Mayor Bailey and councillors. So staff are here this evening to bring forward a recommendation report, which will complete the initiative to update the County of Brant's land use planning policies to incorporate permissions for on-farm diversified uses, as well as agricultural related uses. So you may recall, we started this project back in September through an information report, followed up in October with some, as we heard it, just comments received, as well as some policy direction outline. And we're here tonight to just hopefully receive a recommendation of approval on the project and be able to move forward in entertaining applications. I'm here to answer any questions that councillors or members of the public may have this evening.
Thank you. At this time, I've declared the public meeting open. Are there any questions for Jennifer? Jessica, sorry.
That's okay.
Any questions to Jessica? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 67, it lists under economic development objectives, item D, like David, it talks about to promote and encourage economic development opportunities associated with Highway 403 interchanges and other roads such as Middletown Line Road, Highway 2, Highway 53, Highway 5, Brant Road, King George Road, where transportation opportunities and compatible land use patterns exist. My question is, why don't we have Highway 24 South listed, which runs from 53 Highway to Norfolk? And what about Mount Pleasant Road or the old 24 Highway? I'm wondering why they weren't included.
Jessica, do you have an answer for Gatward?
Sure, Councillor Gatward, sorry, I apologize. Can you just repeat the page number reference there for me?
67.
67.
Our package, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. So this is a piece of the existing official plan policy, which staff are just proposing to amend with respects to the on-farm diversified uses section and clauses. This is an existing portion of the economic development policies which currently exist. Through our new official plan review, we can absolutely take a look at these clauses. We'll be taking a look at the entire document, in fact, and revisiting a lot of the verbiage that's currently included, as we recognize it may be a bit out of date and not inclusive with respects to the entire county and our direction currently and into the future.
Thank you, because there's a lot of farms out our way.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions of clarification for Jessica? Councillor Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up with, along with Councillor Gatward was saying, I do have concerns on like what she had just mentioned about the certain areas. I don't know why the whole county is not included in this. This is I think we're leaving the rest of the county shortchanged on this whole area. So I will have trouble supporting where this is going right now. I know it needs to be looked at going towards the official plan, but it's not correct the way it is right now, in my opinion.
Jessica, you got anything to tell Councillor Coleman to make him feel better about supporting this?
I can definitely try. So I think there's just a bit of confusion with respect to that particular section of the existing OP. So at this time, we are looking to apply the on-farm diversified uses as well as the agricultural related uses to the entire county of Brant. Within the agricultural areas, of course, they have to relate to the primary farming operation on a lot. So it will apply to the entire county of Brant, and we will be anticipating tons of applications throughout the county, all over, for these sorts of land uses. And with respect to those clauses specific to the economic development related policies in our current existing official plan, we will look to update those going forward, but those do not actually specifically relate to the on-farm diversified uses project that we're bringing forward and looking for recommendation on this evening. Some of those clauses are very broad general clauses that address other things. So while they were included to give some sort of perspective and reference on the clauses that we're looking to amend, they don't necessarily directly impact the application that we're looking to seek recommendation on this evening. I hope that helps.
There were a lot of words there, Jessica.
Sorry about that.
Are there any other questions of clarification? No. Heather, are there any members of the public here that want to speak?
No, I've had no request to speak to this application.
All right, seeing none, then I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask council how they want to proceed with this application. Councillor Howes, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Coleman that applications OPA B20JK and ZBA 3720JK on-farm diversified uses be approved, including the reasons outlined in the staff report.
Councillor Coleman, do you want me to take your name off the seconder? And you want to leave it on? Okay, we have it on the floor. We have a seconder. Councillor Gatward, you have a question before the vote?
Yeah, page 129. We received feedback on a proposed policy for ag-related Ontario farm diversified uses. It's several questions, and did we respond to them with information, or is that the response? No, those are all the questions. There's questions and then there's bullet point questions. Were they answered? Did the Brant County Federation receive a response?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gatward. So we actively actually had very close contact with BCFA while we were working on this project. They've been great in their involvement. They've been extremely open in taking all of our questions that we actually developed for them to take back to all of their members. And they actually asked those questions, and then the feedback responses that you see underneath those are what the members kind of fed back to us, because we couldn't all gather due to COVID and the timelines didn't work out with us being able to participate in the meeting. So they collected those on our behalf and we were able to get those comments and feedback. And they were very receptive to our policies that we're looking to incorporate within both our official plan as well as our zoning bylaw.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Jessica? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Jessica. That was well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Number 7B, like Bailey, 223 Brant Church Road. Matt, are you going to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff don't have a presentation for this one. It's pretty straightforward, but if council has the report, and if there's any questions, just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll declare the public meeting open then and ask the clerk if there's any. First of all, does council have any questions or clarification? No? Heather, is there anyone here from the public that wants to speak to or against?
No, I do not have any applicants or members of the public listed at the moment.
All right. No questions. Councilor Gatward, are you hiding behind your map?
No.
Okay. Seeing no questions, I'll declare the public hearing closed, and I'll ask Councilor McAlpine for a resolution.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell that application ZBA 22-20-AW Anna Wilson 223 Brant Church Road be approved as outlined in the staff report.
No more questions? Clarification? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7C, the church. Matt, you want to speak to this? Or is there no?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the last one, no presentation here. Just to note that the future development will be subject to site plan control, and a detailed design will be reviewed, and urban design will be undertaken for this site in the future. So, other than that, no presentation. Thank you.
Again, we'll declare the public meeting open and ask if there's anyone that wants to speak to it. Council, do you have any questions of clarification? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Matt. Through you to staff, I guess. Do we have an architectural rendering of what's being proposed? I saw the plot plan, but I don't know whether it's in keeping with the rest of the building, which I hope it will be.
What?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bell. I am not aware of a rendering. However, perhaps the agent who is here tonight can help answer that question.
Who is the agent here tonight?
It's Rob Van Porten, Cahoon Engineering, Mr. Mayor.
My goodness, you're a lot, sir.
I'm going home after this one, I think. Renderings actually have been prepared. We have the architect here in our office, and would be prepared, I guess, to respond. But they were actually provided to the county probably on several occasions, and they should be on their file. And clearly, we appreciate that the church has got significant historical significance to the community and certainly the immediate area. And as a result, an architect has been retained. As I said, he is available, sitting across the desk from me, and can respond. Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a brief presentation to the purpose of the application, and it's really twofold. The first is to consistently rezone the entire church property as heritage open space 1. Currently, part of the property, only the church, I guess, is zoned open space, which allows the place of worship. The balance of the property, which includes the manse, the parking lot off of Queen Street, et cetera, are actually in a residential zone. So the first part of the application is actually to consistently zone the entire property so it is heritage open space 1. As indicated, the property is in a heritage area, and the church was created a number of years ago in the 1800s, as I recall. No, I'm not that old, but as I recall my research. The second part of the application is to allow the creation of a parish hall to be created along Main Street, again having a setback of 0 as the church is. We're also creating additional parking, new parking lot off of Dumfries Street, as well as increasing the overall parking of the area to better accommodate parishioners. It is noted during the initial information meeting that certainly the church and the parish hall would not be occupied simultaneously, and therefore the parking demand should take that into consideration. The other part of the application clearly is to recognize certain design criteria, setbacks, etc., that are required to be modified within the Heritage Open Space 1 zone to accommodate setbacks of parking areas, and as I said, the zero setback of the parish hall. Mr. Chair, all the exceptions are listed actually on page 1, I believe, of the report. We've worked quite consistently and extensively, I guess, with staff to make sure that the design is appropriate for the site and that all the elements as listed on page 1 of the report are actually are what we require. And as I said, we appreciate the efforts of staff to work with us to get this done. You know, as I said, we have an architect who is here to respond to questions, and certainly in recognition of the importance of the church, there have been a number of upgrades to the facade of the building to make it harmonious, not only to the church but the overall area. Mr. Chair, as I said, I'm here, Bob Phillips is here, and the architect is here, and we can respond to questions.
Thank you. Councillor Ferry, please.
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just through you, more of a comment. I worked with Patrick, the architect, in the past. An example of his work would be the Grand River Community Health Center. Very strong work, very community-minded, and a very good fit. The best architect I've worked with in the region. So I'm not really worried about the design, if that helps Councillor Bell at all.
That's always good to hear, Councillor. Thank you for telling us that. Councillor Gatward first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the architect is present, he must certainly have a plan or a rendering of the new hall. And I'm wondering if he could show it to us via the camera they have there at the office so we can all see it.
It's not working out so well, Councillor Gatward. It looks a little Lego.
I can see.
If I may, it's really difficult to understand the concept of the building just by video here. I would be really happy to make a more formal presentation when everyone has the opportunity to have the documents in front of them so that they can see the relationship of the scale, the proportions, the materials of the proposed parish hall to the existing significant architectural aspects of the church. You would see it in the parish hall renovation addition drawings. So it's, I mean, I can talk about it now, but it's so much more helpful and clear if you had documents in front of you.
That's right, sir. You know, it's not fair to ask you to speak to it now. It's one of the things COVID has taken away from us is all the big presentation pieces and the
Yes.
you know, all the sample boards and everything. It's unfortunate that everything seems so one-dimensional right now.
But I do appreciate. But I do appreciate, Mr. Mayor, seeing the shot that the architect has shown us. At least it gives us an idea of what it's going to look like. And it appeared that there's some stone-like material incorporated to match the church so that it blends a bit. So it looked okay to me.
Councilor Chaplain?
If I could just say, we understand we're going to go through site plan approval for this project, and that would be a really good time to circulate all of the materials, if not sooner, and to make a presentation at that time, and to explain the sensitivities that were taken into heart of the addition relating back to the church.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McAlpine?
Mine was more of a comment as well. It was circulated, the drawings, to the Heritage Committee. And in general, I think everybody was in favor of it and felt that it was sympathetic to the existing church. And the only question they had was just to making sure the materials were in keeping with what was existing. And I feel comfortable that we've been assured that it would be. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If everybody's finished questions, a couple comments myself, if I could. As far as the drawings and that, absolutely sooner better than later would be perfect. I guess my only comment on this, and when this was brought to us earlier, I did bring up the parking issue. Again, I realize how many spaces are there, but also living in that area, I understand what happens when the church is full, which I'm assuming now that they're going to have this hall, which is fantastic. There's going to be more weddings, more usage of it. I'm just hoping that the parking doesn't become an issue on that. I guess my biggest concern with this is, and I would like to understand as far as potential square footage loss of the size of this hall when we look at all the setbacks, because if we look at the the street setback to 0 meters, and we look at the interior side setback, we're talking potentially 6 foot difference. In the reduced interior side, we're again like 7 foot difference. I'm just trying to understand if there's any common ground or common area we could get to still allow a product like what you want, but reduce some, or actually increase some of these setbacks so it's not such a big change. That's my only concern. If you can respond to that, great. If not, I needed to speak my piece there.
Thank you.
I think it's a two-part answer, if I could. One is, the first is architectural, recognizing that this is a residential neighborhood for the most part, except for the building, the deaf-blind school across the street. We're very sensitive to reduce the scale of the building, not only its mass, but its footprint as well. And so if you have a site plan in front of you, you'll see how the building is broken up into a series of nodes. And it's not just a large footprint of a parish hall. It's a series of smaller buildings, which is no different from a home with some additions that may have occurred in the past as well. So we were sensitive to push it back away from the residential properties as much as possible. And this is just a one-story building, no different from a newer home. As far as the comments for setbacks in this neighborhood, are they reasonable for what would be expected?
Bit of a chair shuffle here, but the setbacks, obviously this has been circulated to the public and the neighbors around, and I don't think we've received any adverse comments. We are sensitive to those, and as we do go through the detailed design of this building, we'll take the comment that we received today into consideration, without making a commitment to increase any of those setbacks. But we will respect the comment we had, and if there's some opportunities in there, when you look at the function of the building and the massing of it and its proximity to the neighbors, we'll certainly take those into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate that. Again, I don't want it to come across that I'm against this, because I'm not. I'm just I just wanted to understand if there was anything that could be done to bring it in line. But thank you very much.
We'll take those into consideration.
Thanks, guys.
Are there any other questions? And Heather, you said there was no one from the public here?
Yeah, no one for this application.
All right, thank you. So I'll declare the public hearing closed, and I'll ask council how they want to proceed with the application. Gatward,
It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce that application ZBA 31/20 AW, the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation of the Diocese of Hamilton at 17 Washington Street, be approved as outlined in the report.
any last questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. We're doing our very best here in the county of Brant to continue with business. I don't know if you know this or not, but we're one of the only counties around that are getting through planning meetings. A lot of people have put them all on hold, and we're trying to get through these things the best we can. And I just hope the public, I know that the engagement of the public and the engagement even of us counselors isn't the same as it was before COVID. And I know that some of us feel a disconnect from each other. Counselors are not getting together like we used to. And I know the public might feel that they're not being engaged properly, but you have to understand we are doing our best, and we are, we're still in business. So that's a good thing. This was a perfect example of how great things could have been had you been able to show us your sample boards and your presentation. And it's just paper, unfortunately, tonight. So moving on to 7D. Cannabis production. Who has this one? Matt, you have this one too.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ryan Cummins will be providing us with a presentation on this one tonight.
Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of the report in front of council tonight is to provide council with recommendations regarding updates to the county's cannabis production and processing zoning provisions for the county's zoning bylaw 6116. The goal is to align the county's policies with provincial and federal regulations and to address concerns raised by the public in recent years. Staff have identified several key areas of the zoning bylaw to update with respect to cannabis, including setbacks to sensitive land uses, lighting, and odor controls. Staff had hosted a virtual open house on October the 14th, 2020, as well as posting an online survey on the county's website to engage with members of the public regarding the new proposed zoning provisions. Based on the results from that survey, in general terms, we heard that people wanted to protect residential and institutional uses, and were also concerned with odor, lighting, noise, and hours of operation. In regards to where cannabis production and processing facilities should be located, the majority of respondents thought that they would be most appropriately located in either agricultural or employment zones. Staff are supportive and recommending approval of the updated cannabis production and processing zoning provisions. It is staff's opinion that the updated provisions are aligned with provincial and federal regulations and address the majority of concerns raised through public engagement, both past and present. Staff is therefore recommending that council adopt the zoning provisions attached to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll declare this a public meeting open. Is there any questions to the application? Seeing none, is there anyone else here, Heather, to speak to the application?
No, I have no members of the public tonight.
No other questions or clarification from council? Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the conclusions on page 165 of Ryan's report. We are doubling the separation distance from 150 to 300 meters, as Councillor Miller mentioned earlier in this meeting. And that's for facilities without air treatment control. And we're also looking at hours of operation and lighting. And those are going to be enforced through site plan control. So staff believe that 300 meters is the best separation. And that would be 1,000 feet almost, 984.3 feet. So the new proposed cannabis production facility just up the road from Oak Hill area, I do want to make sure that I find out how far that is from Westview Street. Because this is very concerning, and that's an old building that is being converted, but we don't have any details yet about odor control in the building and how that's going to be handled. I think there's probably lighting in place already, but it's because of existing odor issues in the county, it's very concerning. So I support the 300 meter number, and we're doubling the distance. That's my comment.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and ask council what they want to do with this application, giving it.
Councillor Miller.
Oh, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment, because I have been following the whole issue rather closely, but I want to commend staff. I thought the recommendations are very well balanced. I mean, if it was up to me, there wouldn't be any in the county, but I don't think we can do that. I mean, they do provide jobs. They do provide economic growth. It's a legal product, like it or don't like it. So again, I thought it was a nice balanced approach taken by staff. So I do support it. I guess my only wish was that it had come a lot sooner in this term of council, but it is what it is. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Councillor LaFerriere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Miller that application ZBA 39/20/AW/RC countywide update to cannabis production and processing provisions be approved as outlined in the written report.
Thank you. Everyone's clear on what they're voting on? All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. I do have a bit of good news here. It's just been confirmed by our CAO that the county of Brant is not in an orange zone. It is still in the yellow zone for COVID, which is a good thing to hear. So my sources from 4:30 were wrong. So it's still not great, but it's obviously further away from red than I thought it was. So there you go. Bit of good news between applications. 7E, 38 Papel Road. Who's going to bring this to us?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ryan will be giving our presentation again this evening for this one.
Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject lands are located on the west side of Papel Road, north of Colburn Street East in Canesville. The subject lands are approximately 5.02 hectares or 12.42 acres in size and are surrounded primarily by industrial and commercial uses to the east, west, and south. There are also several legal non-conforming single-detached dwellings located adjacent to the subject lands off of Papel Road and Colburn Street East. Directly adjacent to the north of the subject lands is the rail trail owned and operated by the Grand River Conservation Authority. The subject lands are situated within the primary urban settlement area of Canesville and are designated as employment in the county's official plan. The applicant is proposing to amend the current zoning on the subject lands from heavy industrial M3 to special exception heavy industrial M3-25 to allow for an aggregate crushing facility as a permitted use, as well as a reduction in parking provisions for the contractor's yard and associated office space. Staff is of the opinion that the zoning bylaw amendment application has merit, as it is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the general intent of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the county's official plan. Staff is therefore recommending that this application be approved. This concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I will declare the public meeting open. Who's here to speak to the application?
Sarah Code, Bruno Artenosi, and Rob Stevens are all on the line.
Welcome. Who wants to begin?
Lady first.
Bruno, do you want
Good
to?
evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Sarah Code, planner with GSP Group. Myself and Rob Stevens and Bruno Archinosi are here on behalf of the application and are here to answer any questions. We are here in support of staff's recommendation to you this evening. I don't have a formal presentation, but if there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Is there any questions from council for clarification? Councilor Ferrier, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have one. There's a lot in here about noise control, good reports, etc. My only question is about the windows and doors. Now, I know it says that they're going to be open at times for regular reasons. In my ward, there's an industrial area, and the noise isn't so bad, but there's issues with climate control in some of the buildings. I won't name any in particular. So what'll happen is they'll, in the summertime specifically, and sometimes in the winter, they'll open up all the doors and windows for airflow, which makes sense for those working in the space. If there was climate control within the space, then that wouldn't need to happen, and we wouldn't get all the noise complaints we get at those times. So I guess my question is, just a little context there, but my question is, what is the plan for climate control within the facility so that windows and doors don't need to be opened all the time to balance the heat and the needs of folks working versus folks in the neighboring community?
Who's going to speak to that? Bruno?
Okay, it's actually a good question, Councillor. And I'd just like to point out that the recycling or crushing facility in this proposed building is only a minor part of the building. The other part, the largest part of the building is used primarily for mechanic work and inside storage of vehicles and so forth. So I don't believe that part of the building will be climatized. As far as the recycling facility is concerned, we haven't got that far yet, but we are totally committed to dust control, noise control, and if climate control is determined to be a benefit to that, then we'll certainly look at that as well. This facility is only meant to operate at the very most 5 days of the month during regular business hours. So, and you know, the lay of the land is also well placed. Like we're sort of considered at the low end of the valley, shall we say. We're considerably lower than the other elevations where all the other neighboring users are located. We've got designs in place here to buffer any noise that emits from the enclosed structure. So I don't believe that even if we do open the windows and doors, it would create any kind of obnoxious noise that would be disturbing to any of the residents or any of the neighbors.
Thank you for the direct answer. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Coleman first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two concerns, and following up on Councillor Ferrier, I do have concerns on the noise level. What guarantee will we have that you're only going to be operating 5 days of the month? My other concern is truck traffic coming into this yard. So I do know that Papel Road used to be a heavy road for trucks in the past from Green Life Protein, but these are going to be gravel trucks bringing this product in and out and whatnot. So there will be a lot of noise from the bins or whatever they're going to be in. So I just wonder if the consultant can answer my question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Bruno, are you going to speak to that?
I think Councillor has requested our consultant to answer that, but I would gladly speak to it if it's his pleasure.
No, it doesn't really matter. Whoever knows the answer would be a great one to speak to it.
Rob, go ahead.
Okay. It's my understanding that, well, more than my understanding, in addition to the design that's been done, the site will require approval from the Ministry of Environment in order to operate. And so it is my understanding that the number of days that the crusher will operate will be part of the information that is provided to the Ministry of Environment for an environmental compliance approval or environmental registration, as the case may be, depending on the operating codes of the facility. And so in all likelihood, that will be written into the environmental approval that's granted. And we've certainly taken into account the trucks that will be visiting the site as part of the crushing operation and also the regular contracting operation. So again, and then Bruno can clarify if my understanding here, or confirm, but my understanding is that these crushing operations, this is not primarily a crushing facility. These are ancillary to the demolition and construction activities that are the primary function of pole can construction. So we have taken the expected volume of trucks in and out, both for contractor operations and for the crushing operations, and included those in the noise analysis that we've completed. And it is all of that in total is within the limits of the County of Brant and the Ministry of the Environment.
Councillor Coleman, is that reassuring? Councillor Miller, you're next, please.
Very specific question. I was reading the noise report. We talked about 2 inches of insulation on the walls, but nothing for the ceiling or the roof. Is that an oversight, or will there be something in the roof?
Well, it's customary for all roofs to have insulation for climate control and winter climate control. So if we're going to put insulation on the walls, you can expect that there'll be insulation on the ceiling as well.
I mean, that makes sense to me, but I thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Sure.
And I can clarify too that we're talking about insulation, not in a wall cavity in this case, but insulation facing into the interior of the space. And its function is to absorb sound. So the primary requirement is that there's a sufficient amount of acoustic absorption material inside that space. And so certainly if it'll be beneficial if there's some added to the ceiling, but it would be required.
Thank you. Councillor Gatward, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noted some of the sound power levels or the decibels for some of the equipment that will be used on the site on page 207 of our report from the sound engineering firm. And there's quite an array of trucks and the crusher and the stacker and the bins and the impulse noise from the bins when those huge bins that weigh 20 or 25 tons are rolled off and bang down on where they're being placed. And the reason I'm asking this, we used to have a real bumpy road out here on Old 24 Highway. And one summer, a lot of dump trucks were going down the road. And the banging noise, I live like 300 feet at least from that Old 24. The banging noise from the dump trucks was so annoying to me. And it shook one of the ladies' homes that they were going by. I guess I'm wondering how we can compare these decibel levels to common everyday household noises that we're familiar with. I tried to look up on the internet and it said 90 to 100 was equivalent to a subway. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the sound engineer, some of these noises are over 100 decibels. And of course, the sound does dissipate the further away you go. But there could be 3 or 4 things operating on the site and bins being brought to the site to be delivered for the crusher, and bins taken away with the crusher materials finished and taken off site to a customer. And it just seems to me that this is a very, very noisy operation to be had in the center of Canesville. I would liken it to if we were down the road on Paris Road from the Egg and I don't even know if the Egg and I is still there or not, but it's a mixed use down there. There's commercial and some houses, and the same thing in Canesville. There's houses, there's commercial, and there's industrial. And it just bothers me that this crusher and the machinery is so noisy. And my last question would be, on the Polcon website, I saw a new machine, which was an addition to their fleet. And it was amazing, this machine. It had a big claw and it would pick up huge chunks of concrete and crush them right with the claw. And it was really an impressive machine, but it was really, really noisy. And I'm wondering, is it going to be at this site? Because I didn't see it listed on page 207. So if the sound person could comment on the noise, and the applicant could comment on that new claw machine, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ken. Who's going to talk about the claw machine?
Okay, well, we actually only use that in horror movies, Councillor, but lightness aside, what you saw was a works operation going on in Woodstock. That is called a polarizer, and it is used on our demolition sites where the concrete objects are too large to transport. We don't own that machine, and it is rented for job specific. And that's where you saw it. So I can assure you that machine is not going to be on the site.
Councillor Week, you've been waiting a long time to say something.
Wait, Mr. Mayor, I'm waiting for the sound engineer to comment about the sound noises on the list. Compare every day.
I'm not sure what you want them to say, Councillor Gatward. They've given you the report of the sound. He can tell you exactly the same thing if you like. Go ahead.
I can clarify a little bit. I'm not familiar with the pagination in the overall report, because I don't have a copy of that, but I have a copy of my noise report, which I understand is part of the overall package you received. And based on the numbers you're talking about, I have to conclude that you're referring to our table A1, which is in an appendix to our report. And there are different kinds of sound levels. These are what are called sound emission levels, or sound power levels. And they represent, if you like, the at source sound level. And as you were alluding to, if we measure sound and we walk closer and closer and closer to a sound source, the sound levels go up and up and up and up and up until we bang into the piece of equipment, and that's as loud as it gets. So you can think about these sound levels essentially at zero distance. And when we go generally, a meter away from a sound source, it's going to drop off by about 8 to 10 dB right off the bat from these levels we're looking at here. There's a specific engineering reason why we quote these what are called sound emission levels or sound power levels, because that is the basic input quantity that we as an acoustical engineer use when we're comparing different pieces of equipment or using that as input data to do an impact analysis and calculate what are going to be the sound levels at some point within or neighboring an industrial facility. And so we start with these, and these are the at source or zero distance sound levels. They go into, if it's a proposed facility, as we're talking about in this case, they go, for each of those pieces of equipment, they go into a fairly sophisticated computer model. It's like a 3D solid CAD model. And it might be a point source that just sits and operates like a loader or a crusher or a conveyor, or it might be a mobile source that moves around. And so the computer model that we use, which is what we have to use when it's a facility that isn't built yet, it accounts for, when we look at, say, a neighboring residence or any point off site, it determines the sound level there by summing up all of the sources at their locations and adjusting for their respective distances and the topography and the shielding and the meteorology and the foliage and the ground absorption and any obstructions in between and so forth, and sums up the result. And so those sound levels in our table A1, they're useful as the starting point, but they don't tell you at any neighboring location off-site what's the cumulative sum sound levels. But you can see those in our report. If you look, there are some tabulated at specific off-site residences in our tables 5 and 6. And then there are also contours that give you greater spatial resolution. And you can look at the contours and see what the sound levels are over a wide area on and surrounding the facility. And the sorts of sound levels we're looking at offsite generally range from about 35 to 45 dBA, A-weighted decibels, and in some cases up to 50 at residential properties or 55 at commercial properties. So to put that into perspective, as you were talking about comparing that to common sound levels, normal speech, not raised voice, but just normal speaking voice, is about 60 dBA at a meter. And so, and that's part of the reason that the Ministry of Environment and County of Brant sound level limits are set at 50 in the daytime and 45 at night. So those are targets that need to be achieved, or criteria or limits on sound, and they're designed to avoid disturbance, annoyance. It doesn't mean that the sound from the facility would be inaudible, but it's 5-10 decibels quieter than normal speech at a meter.
The normal what? Sorry.
Normal talking voice speech face to face at about 3 feet or a meter away is about 60 dBA.
Councillor
Gatward? And have you read the peer review report?
Yes, I was provided with a peer review which asked some supplementary questions, which we provided answers for. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wheat, please.
No other councillor recommends an application that's coming to the County of Brant, move down to the industrial site near the Egg and I, because that's moving right out of the County of Brant. We need to keep business here, not direct it to another neighbor.
No, I'm talking Paris, Councillor. I'm talking in Paris, Councillor Wheat.
It's in Wentworth County.
Yeah, Councillor Gatward, just leave that alone, please. Thank you, Councillor Wheat. Any other questions or clarification to the applicant? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, is there anyone from the public that wants to speak to this applicant?
Yep, there's 2 members of the public, the first being Graham Marcotte. I believe he's on the line.
Welcome, Graham.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I do have some concerns that I voiced at the first council meeting, and I don't think that they were addressed by the planning department. I'm very disappointed in that. But now Stevens is here. We are our commercial building is located on Colburn Street. And the sound receptor R4 on figure 5 is showing that the sound receptor is behind our building. You've indicated that on this computational analysis here that the 55 decibels is going to contact our building, and that the 50 decibels is going to actually run down our building. And the only reason that location R4 for the noise receptor is reading lower is because it's being blocked by our building. As you've indicated, the software takes into account obstacles to the sound traveling, and in this case, our building is that obstacle. You've also just mentioned that speech is about 50 decibels. So you're basically telling us, from what I see here, that we're not going to be able to hear each other speak. We're going to have to speak louder to each other while this rock crusher is in operation. I find that unacceptable. It's for a zoning bylaw to render our property useless for regular conversation is not good. So maybe we can talk about that. Also, the peer review I just received today after asking for it 10 days ago from Matt Vaughn, and I was under the understanding that this peer review was done recently. It was done on June 9th. So that's not a current peer review. It doesn't take into account any comments that have been made by counselors, public. It was done long before the first information session. This Mr. R. Boomeister and Associates that did the peer review, if you do any research, he's an expert, but he's an expert in solar studies and shadow impacts. On their website, they don't mention anything at all about sound studies or being qualified to analyze other people's work related to sound studies. I voiced numerous concerns through email to the planning department, and I understand that Brant County is open for business. The fact that this evening we've had, a handful of people from the public speaking to, very serious subjects related to things that are going to affect their homes, that they're going to affect their lives with, odors and things not related to this application at all. But it makes me wonder if the public is really being consulted adequately, and that they really aren't understanding what they're missing because of this COVID stuff. Maybe we should be putting some of these topics on hold. I realize that, Bruno, that this is a long-term commitment, and I think it is potentially something that could work, but it seems like it's being rushed through. And I really don't want it to impact our property and our business. And I don't think that it should impact other people that live around this area either. With regard to the notices that have been sent out, they've been late. The last notice that I received was just an aerial view. I had to follow up with county staff to get any information to this meeting that's taking place today. Understand that could be a mailing error, but it seems coincidental that it's happened several times with the relation to this application. Also, we had somebody that came into our store today, a neighbor, that said they had not been consulted. I think there's some serious deficiencies in the planning department's handling of this application. I can't speak to any other application, but I do feel that there's a lot of room for improvement, and I think this needs a second look and maybe actually answer some of our concerns rather than disregarding them. And thank you to Joan Goward and to Brian Coleman. You're really the only two folks that I've got any adequate responses from through all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. I don't want the applicant to respond to you. This isn't the place for them to respond. I thank you for coming forward tonight with your questions. I'm sorry that you didn't get the answers that you were looking for from staff sooner. But we've heard everything you've said tonight, so do you have anything else to tell us?
I think I expressed myself in the first information meeting. I hope that that was heard. I'm surprised to hear that there's a page 200 to a report, because I was told that I got all the information. My reports are 50 pages long, so clearly I did not. Yeah, I think there's some real holes in the planning department. It's not so much to do with this this application. I'm really not trying to affect anybody's business. You know, there's probably measures that could be taken to reduce these decibels. And I wonder too, if it's only going to be run 5 days a month, could there not be a permit issued for 5 days a month rather than a zoning change that's forever?
Yep. Councillor Pierce wants to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Marcotte there, just for clarification, I'm not going to speak about all the other stuff, but page 200 is concerning our report. Our report has everything in it, not just this application. That is where the page 200 came from. Just to clarify that.
Yeah, it's the numbering of our entire agenda for tonight, so it's not just the report. Councillor Ferrier, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Marcotte. You mentioned a commercial building that you are the neighbors of. What is the commercial or retail building? Is it the motorcycle and ATV store?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to confirm that. I imagine people do test drives, and you have people dropping off and picking up ATVs and motorcycles and things of that nature?
That's correct.
With that, do you get a lot of complaints currently from the neighbors about the noise being made by the motorcycles and ATVs, or
any motorcycle or ATV would be within legal decibel range for on-road use.
Okay, my question through you, Mr. Mayor, was: do you get a lot of complaints from the neighborhood regarding the noise levels from your operation? Just trying to get a gauge of the neighborhood.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gatward, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I was going to say our report 7E on our agenda runs from page 169 to 244. So that's 70 pages approximately. It's not, yeah, we did not get 200 pages just for 38 Papel Road. But my question is to you, Mr. Marcotte, when the property owner behind you was doing work in the past on that 38 Papel Road property, did you hear the bulldozers and machinery at your location?
Yes, we watched them with a machine that just ground the trees up, and we heard it. Yes, we did.
Oh, that was that a couple years ago when they cleared out the?
I believe so.
I think we heard about that in another letter that we received. But were there machines out there grading and straightening out the site, leveling in preparation for the building of the contracting yard, for instance? And I wondered if you heard those machines.
I don't.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. What does that have to do with this specific application?
I was going to say.
Well, it's in the same place, Councillor Pierce.
Oh, I understand that, Councillor, but we're talking two totally separate things. We're talking about a bulldozer and a tree grinder, as opposed to a rock crushing establishment, which is what this is. That has nothing to do with this application.
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. He's right, Councillor Gatward. You were sort of going into the weeds there, in my opinion.
Well, I'm just saying that those machines that are going to be used with the rock crusher are noisier than a bulldozer and a tree crusher. That was my point.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to respond to Councillor Gatward there. I'm sorry, Councillor Gatward, do you know the decibel levels of a tree grinder and a bulldozer?
A bulldozer would be equivalent to some of the machinery listed on page 207. Actually, we have Mr. Stevens here. He could probably answer that question exactly.
It's irrelevant, Councillor, is what I'm trying to get at. He's already stated that the decibels he was taking was right at the machine. Once it got out, it dropped down to just the same as a conversation at 3 meters, is what he was saying.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Pierce. Quite frankly, with my experience with dump trucks out here 300 feet away, I don't agree with that.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. Thank you, Councillor Pierce. Is there anything else you want to tell us, Mr. Mercott?
No, I think I've spoken my piece. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us tonight. Madam Clerk, who is our second citizen that would like to speak to us tonight?
Pam Van Kulen would like to speak.
Thank you. Welcome, Pam.
Hello, thank you. We live on Papel Road, and we enjoy spending time outdoors and the peace and quiet of our property. The noise of having a rock crusher here is pretty unimaginable. Ours is the next house to the north of 38 Papel, but we were excluded from being informed about this until about 3 weeks ago. After recently reading over the noise study, I don't think that we were properly considered as a sensitive noise area, being residential. Another concern is health and safety and the wind carrying the dust produced from the crushing of old concrete containing silica and asbestos fibers. There are people living nearby. There's people walking on the trail, and there are customers using the businesses on Colburn Street. The species at risk assessment study refers to a visit done in February of 2020, and it was reported that the birds are not residing in Ontario at that time of the year. And maybe this study is incomplete and should be done during warmer weather when all the birds are present. We feel that the crusher should be situated in a more remote location without people surrounding it. Is this location appropriate? Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Are there any questions for Pam from council? Anybody want to? No? Seeing none. Thank you for coming to speak to us tonight, Pam. And we heard what you've had to say, so thank you. Is there anyone else, Heather, that wants to speak to us in the public tonight regarding this application?
Nope, that completes my list.
Seeing none, are there any other questions of clarification from council? Seeing none, I'd like to call this public hearing closed and ask council how they'd like to proceed with this application. Turning it over to Councilor Wheat, please.
Moved by myself and second by Councillor Howes that application ZBA 11-20 on behalf of Olchak Real Estate Holdings be approved.
Any final questions of clarification before we call the vote? Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting the recommendation by staff. I have a number of concerns on this. The residents in that area have concerns, and I think we all try to listen to our residents as much as possible and whatnot. I think the jury is still out on this, on the decimals of the sound of what's going to happen. So I'm not going to support this, and I will ask for a recorded vote at the appropriate time when you call for the vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Councilor Gatward, you had something more to say?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did. I too am not going to support this. I do believe this is going to be a noisy intrusion into the Canesville area. I fully support the contracting yard that they want to build and the office building, but not the crusher and the building that goes with it. I think it's going to cause a myriad of bylaw noise complaints from the community. And I would like to see the county consider it as a temporary use for possibly a year or two to see how things go in that community before we ever make a final permanent zone change to allow this at that location. Otherwise, if we can't make it temporary, then I will not support the application.
Any other questions or comments? I too can't support this application. I certainly support the business. I don't believe it's the right place for it at this time before we know more about what's going to happen in Gainesville. So Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, is Councillor Gatward making that a motion? Temporary?
Well, it's not in front of us right now. Councillor Gatward, do you want to make a motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to planning staff, if the motion is passed, could it be a temporary 2-year approval or not?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gatward, what we have in front of us tonight is for a permanent zone change, not the temporary use zone change. So, you know, we're here to consider what has been applied for. What I can say is that there are other things that council could consider. One of the items that council could consider is bumping up the site plan process so that council can be part of that process. We've heard some concerns tonight from some neighbors in regards to dust and noise. Although those items have been addressed through some studies, you know, we could ensure that those are taken care of through a development agreement. And also it would be perhaps good for council to see how some of those items are being mitigated through the site plan drawings as well. But I'll leave that in council's hands. If you have any other questions, please let us know.
I think that we need to vote on what's in front of us tonight.
As is, yes, and I can't support it because of the noise. Kingsville is going to be a new community, and having this noisy crusher in the middle of Kingsville is going to deter new development, in my opinion. And it's also going to impact the businesses along the highway commercial, along where Mr. Marcotte has his business. So I'm sorry, but I can't support a crusher there. I agree it belongs in a remote location.
Thank you, Councillor Gatward. Councillor McAlpine, please.
So I just wanted sort of clarity from staff, but you're saying that the sound decibels are going to be studied further through the site plan process to ensure that they aren't an issue to the neighbors? Is that what you're saying? So this will be addressed if approved tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McAlpine. So the noise decibels have been studied through an engineer's report. They've also been peer reviewed by a separate engineer. So I think the opportunity to study them has been completed. The report did recommend a number of mitigation measures to ensure that those decibels are kept in check with ministry requirements. We would be looking to make sure that that is implemented through the site plan process. Thank you.
Any other questions of clarity?
Mr. Mayor, am I out of order to ask to make a couple of comments?
Madam Clerk, the applicant speak again.
Typically, we do allow the applicant to speak after the public presentations.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bruno.
Perception is a big factor in making a decision in this, Mr. Mayor. And I think that the perception that has been embodied now by the residents and some of the councillors is not quite right. This is an operation that is subsidiary to our main operation. We hire anywhere from 50, 60, 70 people, in the Brant area. You refer to it as crushing, we refer to it as recycling. At the present time, we're having to rely on landfill sites and so forth for the products, the byproducts that come out of our operation. We're a major employer in the area. We are, the area where this is being proposed is already zoned for a large, the majority of our operation that has been described here tonight. Machines, trucks, graders, all those are permitted uses right now. Our only addition that we're looking for is an enclosed recycling operation that we plan to adhere to every law, both bylaw and ministry rules. We are not going to be able to run carte blanche here, with disturbing residences and so forth. Mr. Marcotte took possession in 2019 of this building. He has motorcycles there, and they sort of skipped over the noise that motorcycles make. But I think that you would probably have more decibel disturbances from some of your residents who live nearby to railroads and to the motorcycles than you would from our operation. This is an industrial area. These uses are permitted with the same and except for the recycling portion. And we are our intent and our commitment to make this a fully enclosed structure with insulation. And if we do not pay heed to the ministry guidelines, we'll be taken to task. So I don't know what the concern is. The residents who still live there right now are living in an industrial area. When it comes for their turn to pass, those lands will be turned into the similar type of zoning that we have right now. There is no other zoning in Brant that permits these kind of uses. And unfortunately, you happen to live in such an area. We are being sensitive to you. We will not create unnecessary or undue noises to you. And we've done our homework, we've done our due diligence, and we have our studies to support that. And you'll be a constant police watchdog on us, and that we adhere to those, because at any given time that we don't, you can call the ministry and it'll close us down. So I had asked this council to really reconsider their stance on this. We've heard from two people, and I appreciate their concerns. They're here to protect their business. We're here to protect ours as well. And we're here to protect jobs in the community as well. So consider that when you're making your vote. It's not just about two residents who are opposed to an operation that will create a lot of benefit in the county of Brant and its citizens. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? I have again, a bit of a concern. It's come to my attention that a lot of your neighbors that would be complaining or be concerned about you opening your business are not here complaining because you bought their properties and they are living in your houses. So you've sort of taken care of your own problems by buying up the neighbors. That's what I understand. I think that is something that this council should know. And I believe that if you hadn't bought so much property surrounding the area that you're trying to develop, you would have a whole room full of people here complaining. That's what I've heard, and that's what I'm investigating right now. That's why I can't support it. Something's not right. I'm not sure what it is.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, sir, we are not hiding behind anything. We do own a property in the area, and we plan to bring that in conformity with the existing bylaws. Not to go against it, we currently have an application before you for two of those residences, which we own, which proposes nine condominium industrial units. Again, something beneficial to the area and in keeping with what the zoning already is. We're not creating the zoning here. And we're not hiding from the fact that we've tried to assemble property in this particular area that you've designated by prior rezoning to label it as a heavy industrial area. So you can investigate. You don't have to investigate. We'll disclose it to you right now. We own the majority of property right here.
You didn't disclose it. I just brought it up. You did not disclose this, and we've heard from you more than once. So I'm telling my council all the information that I know to make their vote more transparent. That's all I'm bringing is information to the table. That's it. It's my mandate to tell people what I know. And you've just said you're being transparent. Well, I haven't heard it before. We're calling the vote in like 1 minute. And I hadn't heard it until I brought it up myself. I gave you every opportunity. You made it sound like only 2 people were opposing you. Well, you're right, because you bought the other ones out, or they would be opposing you too.
But what is the relevancy of that? What is the relevancy of that?
Wait, hey, I'm speaking. I have the right to tell my council things that I know. And I gave you every opportunity to tell this council why your neighbors aren't here. You made these 2 people that came here tonight seem minimal. And I don't think that's fair. Heather, is Mrs. Marcotte allowed to speak again?
Normally, we'd not go back to delegations a second time around, but if
I would
council
just
wants
like to
pass a
say
resolution.
just a couple of sentences.
I'd like to hear.
Mayor Bailey, in addition to what you said, I just would like to make council aware that the day after the first email was sent out to the planning department requesting additional information, the applicant's realtor did show up at our property asking us to sign an exclusive listing with him to have an offer presented on our property also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to have a recorded vote. Everyone's clear. Councillor Coleman, do you have anything more to say before we vote? No.
No.
Okay, thank you. No one has anything else to say? Recorded vote. Madam Clerk,
Okay, Mayor Bailey,
I can't support it.
Councillor Wheat,
Yes.
Councillor McAlpine,
Yes.
Councillor Laferriere,
Yes.
Councillor House,
Yes.
Councillor Bell,
Yes.
Councillor Pierce,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
No.
Councillor Coleman,
No.
Councillor Gatward.
No.
Motion is carried 6-4.
Thank you. Moving on, staff reports, please. Number 8A. That's Amanda, please. Just Councillor Coleman, if you want to make the resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Bell, that the minor variance application A 18-20 AW waiving of fees be approved.
Any questions to the report? Move to accept the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8B, Councillor Howes, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gatward that staff report RPT-20-190 official plan update as we heard it, engagement summary be received as information.
Any questions or concerns about the report before we call the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8C. Councillor Miller?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just gotta switch around here. Yeah, I'm pleased to move this, Mr. Mayor, and it is moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Laferriere. That staff report RPT-20-158 Lions Shady Acres Trailer Park temporary use bylaw agreement, contractual and default agreement be approved.
Thank you. Any comments or concerns, questions or clarifications? All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Pierce, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment. No, I would just like to say thank you to staff for all the work that they've done on this. This has been a task and a half, and I appreciate their diligence on it. And I think in the end here, we're going to have something good going forward. And it's very clear as to what's going to be accepted and not accepted. So when the time comes that potentially other areas go for the same thing, we've got it pretty clear. So thanks to staff.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to what Councillor Pierce said, yeah, thank you to staff. I know why this is before us, and it started well before this term of council. But we had people doing things that were not in agreement with our bylaws. And the people out there at Shady Acres, whom I've spoken to a lot of them now, they're elderly. I think we know that because they made a couple presentations, and they have a lot of angst. I mean, they were generally terrified that they were going to be kicked out at any moment. Not that long ago. So I'm glad to see it, and I'm glad it was written the way it is. I think it's a pretty good agreement, and I'm also happy that the residents will have 3 years apiece, and God willing, they'll have more after this. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good, thank you. Any other comments? It is a good day for the county, that's for sure. Communications, there are none. Number 10, new business. There was none.
We got to vote on that one, though.
Oh, we got to vote, sorry. All those in favor? Opposed? Yeah, it would be terrible to go to all that work and not vote on it, wouldn't it? There we go. No new business, no in camera. We'll go right to number 12, please, which is the bylaws. Councillor Pierce is going to do bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that bylaws 122-20 through 135-20 be read for a first time.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second reading, please, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that bylaws 122-20 to 135-20 be read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted.
Thank you. Any questions about any of the bylaws before the third reading? Seeing none, Councillor Pierce, if you could do it for the third time, please.
Mayor Bailey, can we vote on the second?
All those in favor of the second reading? Thank you. There were no questions. Third reading, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine, that bylaws 122-20 to 135-20 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor, third reading? Opposed? Carried. Heather, do we have the dates on the next meeting yet?
The next meeting will be on November the 12th for the budget meeting.
Oh, that's during the day, right?
Yep,
correct.
That's an all-dayer.
That's an all-dayer. Bring your lunch. Anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Thank you for all you're doing to keep the community safe. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Ferrier, thank you.